It's time to talk about a very, very important topic, and it's market segmentation for B2B and B2C businesses. It may sound like a boring and dry topic, maybe a little academical, but it is the key for business success, and I say this as someone who has done it wrong and who has done it right. So let me share my thoughts on this with you. Stay tuned. Now, on a very high level, basic market segmentation means there is a B2B and a B2C market. I think we as entrepreneurs know this, it's kind of obvious, it's pretty easy. But there is one level deeper that we need to dig into. In B2B, there is the so-called small segment, the SME segment, and the enterprise segment. They're different names. The SME segment, for instance, is sometimes also called the corporate segment. I'll just use these words. It really doesn't matter. It's important to get the concept rather than the specific vocabulary. Now, the way they're different in the B2B context is that the small segment usually comes with an ACV, which means average contract value, between, let's say, $100 and $10,000. The corporate or the SME segment usually comes between 10K to 100K in ACV. And then there is the enterprise segment, which has more than 100K ACV and potentially could go up into the billions. If you think about, for instance, SpaceX closing another launch contract with NASA, then that's going to be a $1 billion contract. But there are many enterprise SaaS businesses that sell products starting at 250K a year, $1 million a year. So the variability at the higher end is very broad. It's almost a little bit like, if you know boxing or MMA, it's a little bit like that in heavyweight, that you could just get as heavy as you can get and you could dominate your competitors based on that. And there is something similar in B2C. It's called retail segment, affluent segment, and high net worth, or even the ultra high net worth segment. I'm sure there are different ways of looking at this, but that's what I've chosen here. And relative to B2B, what you're talking about here is assets under management. So how much money does one person make? In this case, I'm using in retail 250K and less. In affluent, it's 250K and more. And in ultra high net worth or high net worth, it's $1 million more. And again, here, sky is the limit. I recognize that especially in B2C, you could use other market segmentation criteria, such as psychographics or demographics. For instance, how many people live in a household, what's the age, what's the gender, and all of that stuff matters. But it's not as important for your business as the wealth, the ability to pay of your customers. That's the most important piece that I've seen that determines the success of your business and the quality, frankly, of your life too. So let's talk about the implications here. Let's start with the B2C side. Before we go there, though, just recognize it's going to have massive implications on your product strategy, on your go-to-market strategy, and again, the quality of your life as a business owner and as a business as well. So in B2C, what could it mean, right? If we think about some consumer examples that we're all aware of, then there, for instance, is the banking example. I've worked both at Credit Suisse, which is now gone, but which is both sort of an investment bank, retail bank, and private bank, but also in wealth management and private banking specifically. So if you are a retail customer, for instance, in B2C, so the lower end of the AUM, you will typically interact with large banks that have stores cluttered all across the place, used to have tons of ATMs, now are trying to streamline that a little bit. You're probably using pretty much plain vanilla products like checking accounts and saving accounts, but you're not interacting with them at the same level as, for instance, affluent or high net worth individuals would, which would be more catered to by private banks, whether they're integrated within large retail banks, merchant banks, or are dedicated private banks. They will usually have just one office. They will usually be based in fancy parts of the world. Where I work, for instance, we were in Mayfair in London at Kleinwort Benson. That was the archetypical private bank, and we would have relationship managers offering high touch services and consulting to our customers, and we would on the back end have investment management services that were top notch and really don't compare to what you get as a retail customer. And it's all driven by your ability to pay. How much are you worth as a customer? Sounds a little unfair, but that's just the way life is in capitalism. Another example could be fashion, where you will have completely different purchasing experiences between a Zara and a Gucci. If you go to a Gucci store, first of all, you have to find one. They're not everywhere, versus Zara is usually on Main Street. Gucci is typically not. If you go there, you'll have, someone, a salesperson, maybe offering you a coffee or showing you around, just chatting with you. In Zara, you'll be hard pressed to find anyone that cares about you. The differentiation and the product strategy, the organizational model is completely different. Now, I think we're all kind of aware of that, but if you're a startup, what does that mean for you most fundamentally? If you're a startup, it means for you, better be careful about which tier you pick, whether you're in B2B or B2C, because it's going to make a massive difference for you. You're going to get yourself into a lot of trouble if you're going to into the wrong segment. Now, let's break this down in the example of B2B. I have both B2C and B2B experience, but I'm a little bit more fluent in B2B, so I think I can add more value here. Nonetheless, I think everything I say applies to B2C equally. So let's assume you're targeting small ticket in B2B. So your average customer, your average contract value is somewhere between 100 to 10K in value. Well, what that means is, first of all, you need to have a product that you can, or service that you're able to sell for relatively cheap. If it's for some reason hard to configure or implement your product, you're an SAP, you're a monster, there's no way you're going to target the small segment. It's just going to be a waste of time because of your product. And correspondingly, you also need to have a go-to-market strategy that is very streamlined. Your sales cycle needs to be quick. You cannot spend hours on calls or at trade shows with potential customers, whining and dining them. It needs to be very transactional. Maybe at 10K, you spend a little bit more time with customers, but at 100, it's completely no touch, and it's mostly product-led and marketing-led. There is just no sales because you cannot afford it based on your customer audience, or customer target audience, I should say. What this means is you'll be investing heavily in automation, funnels, and one-to-many communication. You will have also, and it's very important to consider, you will have a low customer lifetime value. You will likely have high churn because these are super sensitive customers when it comes to paying for stuff. And strategies like paid ads, if you compete with SME and enterprise players, you're just going to be outbid on every relevant search term. Trade shows are, unless they are mass market trade shows, are not going to fly for you. What you probably need is affiliates and marketplaces that just drive volume at an unprecedented rate so that you can come in with your low, small prices. In the SME segment, now you're talking about a little bit more ability to pay on your customer side. You may be spending more time with them, probably need to do some consultative selling, will probably have to go to trade shows. Interestingly, in the SME segment, as the name implies, you will most often kind of sell to industrial companies that are maybe in manufacturing or in logistics or commodities. And in that case, you also need to speak their specific language. You need to be on the same wave. With regard to small segments and enterprise, these are many times technology companies or very professionally, especially on the enterprise segment, as very professionally managed organizations so that you can come in with more visionary technology-led communication. You cannot do that, I think, in SME as much as you can in the other two segments. Now, SME segment is much easier to get into than enterprise. The sale is a little bit harder, but that is a key thing to think about, right? Sales cycles will be acceptable, and so it can make sense to target SMEs rather than enterprises as a startup if you don't have too many resources. But let me talk about that in the context of enterprise too. In the context of enterprise, oh dear, you're in for a wild ride. You will have super long sales cycles. You will have to deal with complex organizations with your buyers. They will change. You will have people getting fired, people changing roles, new hires. You will have the moment the CEO change, everything is up in the air again anyways. And it's just going to be hard to navigate the organization. You will have sales cycles anywhere from 12 to up to 24 months. If you can cut it down, great, but honestly, not realistic. The upside with enterprise, and that's why it's the holy grail for any technology business, is very high customer lifetime value, very high stickiness. So once you're in with enterprise, if you're SAP, for instance, or Oracle, as an enterprise resource management system, they're not replacing you. In fact, they're spending more and more money on you. So it's the best place to be in, but it's correspondingly incredibly hard to get in. Now, strategy wise, what do you do, right? The product for enterprise is going to be completely different versus small. So what you cannot do is you can't start with small and then think I'm going to take my product as is and just apply that to enterprise. Most of the time, that's not going to fly. It needs to be more robust, more validated. You will have to have more customer success wrapped around it. But I think there is still a viable path to go from small to SME to enterprise over time, especially if you're a bootstrap or not a well-funded startup. It's just going to take so long to sell into enterprise for you if you're a scrappy, cash poor startup that you're going to go out of business before you have made your first sale. I say this as someone who has led enterprise sales on the strategic level, even has led channel partnerships on this space, and and demand generation or creation. So it just took us like literally 18 months to have any kind of traction, and then it started to ramp, but it's not like we could have achieved that overnight. Impossible to do. And so it is very important from a business perspective. Now, the sad thing is when you're on the small side, you will have painful customers. The interesting thing is the poorer your customers, quote unquote poor, the poorer your customers are, the more, on average, the more painful they're going to be. Don't get me wrong, enterprise is going to be painful. They will have high expectations. There will be vendor diligence processes and stuff like that. But on the small end, $50 for someone that has $1,000 on their account is going to be the world, whereas 50 doesn't really matter for enterprise. They want something completely different. And I think all of that thinking is going to apply to B2C too. So when I build across these segments, right, when I do small, I do affiliates, I do sales funnels, I do content. When I do enterprise, in some instances, you wouldn't even need a CRM and any kind of automation. Like literally, you would just have a lead list in Excel. You would have your sales reps dedicated to specific customers and based maybe on how strategic they are versus not, and just pursue them in whatever way, manually, LinkedIn, trade shows, emails, telephone. You just got to make it work somehow. It's completely uncomparable. And in my opinion, it's one of the things that I'm thinking about in my business too. Enterprise is definitely where I want to move as well, just because the ACV, the average contract value, the customer lifetime value, allows you to build a healthy business. Whereas in small, you're constantly competing for just the leftovers on the market. Sounds a little bad, but it's true. The only way, I guess, maybe if you have a celebrity that can promote you, if you work with large influencers, these are all strategies that you could think about applying. Anyways, I'll pause myself here just because I'm extremely passionate about this topic, because I know how important it is for businesses and how few businesses actually recognize that. Hope you found this useful. Any questions? Drop them into the comment section. I'll definitely get back to you. And if you like this video, leave a thumbs up. And if you like the type of content my channel publishes, then definitely leave a subscribe. It means the world to me as a content creator. Have a great day and talk soon. Bye-bye.